Alright, so we're going to be doing a brake pad replacement and rotor replacement on the front end of this 1999 Dodge Ram. Brakes were squealing pretty bad, so we're pretty sure it doesn't have any brake lining left on it, so we're going ahead and switch them out. Alright, so here's our new pre-parts ready to install. Got our two brake pads to the side, the passenger driver side rotor, whichever side you want to put it on, it's reversible. These do come with the races already installed for the bearings. We're going to be using our old bearings back in. But you will have to get a new oil seal or grease seal, and it'll go on the back side just to keep all the oil from running out the back of it. The front has a cap that goes over it, so nothing can really get out the front. You will need some sort of packing grease, either, see there, it's wheel bearing grease, so you want to make sure it says that. It should be for high temp. And then you'll need some anti-seize here, and then some brake parts cleaner. You want some gloves, especially when you get ready to do the packing of the bearings. So these are the tools you're going to need. The only thing that you might not have is a brake caliper collapser tool. It's going to look like this here. They've got a few different versions of it, but this one's out of my master kit for it, and you're going to actually use a old pad and put against it and push the cylinder of the brake caliper back in, so you can get the new pads in between the rotor there on each side of the rotor. So you're going to need a long screwdriver, flathead. You're going to need a 1-inch wrench for the nut that holds it on the center there, a pair of pliers to take the pin out, a hammer, mallet, and then a 10mm Allen to take the bolts off that hold the caliper to the back side of the rotor. And then I've just got a socket, which makes it a little bit faster, but you can do it with an Allen. And the hammer, once you get this tight or have the unloosen it, just put it in there and whack it a few times, the hammer will come right off. Alright, so we've got our jack sitting under the lower A-arm there. Got it jacked up just a little bit. Then we're going to go ahead and break these loose, and then we're going to sit our jack stand under the frame, back behind the tire, under the cab. So we have two safety positions that if it did decide to jack the fall, we'll have something to catch it. Another thing to note, before you jack it up, just get a few little pumps on it just to get the weight, some of the weight off the tire, and then just go ahead and break loose all the lugs before you actually take it off the ground. This is for any changing any tire out. This is what you're going to do. Just want to get the jack set before you actually start breaking them loose, and then once you get the pressure off the bottom of the tire just a little bit, you'll go ahead and break them all loose all the way around, jack the car up, and then they'll just spin off pretty much by hand, or at least they should. Alright, so the tire is off. We've got our jack sitting underneath the A-arm, and we've got our safety jack stand sitting back there underneath the frame, just in case it did want to fall, it couldn't go anywhere. So the next tech tip would be to come up here, take off. So this is your reservoir. It's usually on the driver's side of the vehicle. This is your reservoir for your brake fluid. There you go. See, I've already collapsed the other side, so it's pretty high already. You might actually have to come in here if it's way too full after you've done everything. You might actually have to take and dip some out of here or siphon it out. Some of the people say to break loose the bleeder back here on the back side. Brake bleeder you can see right there. Usually if you put a wrench on that after it gets some age to it and try to break it loose, it will basically just pop right off, and then you're stuck having to buy a whole new caliper and everything. So easiest way is just to go ahead and collapse it while it's sitting here, and then collapse it the rest of the way once you get it off. But just to give you some wiggle room, as you can tell, those brake pads are pretty tight on there. So usually what I do is I just go through the back here, grab a little spot, and just prise it over. Alright, so you're going to take a screwdriver, place it down in here, catch it in between the brake rotor and the caliper, pull out on it, okay, and that should give you a little bit of wiggle room to get the caliper off. So we've got those brake pads loose. So now all you need to do, get your 10mm Allen wrench and break loose that screw down inside that rubber grommet there. So one right there and one right here. Alright, so you're just going to put your Allen wrench right in there, hold it, and take it with a hammer and smack it. Because the side will go down, and if you're on the passenger side, then you can up it. Just put it around. So what you do is right there, screw down. Oops. And just slide that down there. And maybe the same for the bottom one. Alright, so now since we got those two bolts out of it, you should just be able to lift it right up and off. Alright, sit up here for a second. It's a good thing that we're doing this. It wouldn't be very long until that thing was grinding. So I'm just going to take a screwdriver, get behind there, lift that up out of the hole. Same on the other side, and it will drop off somewhere. Okay. So there's our exterior one. You can see there, it's got some meat left on it. And our inner one, right here. See, it's pretty much flush with the metal almost. It's got me a 1/16 of an inch in there, if that. Before you actually shove it all the rest of the way back in, it's a good idea to go ahead and take a plastic brush and go around it so you can't damage that seal there. And just brush all the dirt and debris off of it, at least as much as you can. Then take like WD-40 and spray it around that. Now you wouldn't want to be doing it if you're using the rotor down here. You wouldn't want to spray right on top of it, but since I'm changing it all out, I really don't care. And just take and rub it around that to loosen the seal up a little bit, so it will slide all the way back into the seal a little bit easier instead of catching it and rolling it over. If you damage this seal here, you'll basically have to rebuild this whole thing or go get you a new one, which is easier than trying to rebuild this thing. It can be a pain to rebuild. Alright, and just go ahead and reinstall your old brake pad real quick. Okay. Install your collapser. And we'll go ahead and collapse it down the rest of the way. Okay. And she's bottomed out. You don't want to put too much pressure on it. And usually they give you a little bit of work room for the new brake pad, so you don't have to have it completely collapse down. Also, you don't actually have to have a compressor tool to get this piston back in. You can use the rotor here, like I was doing with the screwdriver, just keep working it in until it gets in about the same it is right there. Sometimes you will have to take this off, the caliper off, put the new pad on the inside, and then press against the outside of it with the screwdriver, keep pulling it out, and it will finally compress that back in enough so you can get both pads, the inner and outer one, back on and get it stuck back in there if you're not going this far. These should be floating in here, and they're pretty much seized in the home. You can push them back, it takes a pretty good amount. They should be able to you should be able to just walk it back and forth across, and it's supposed to come out this back side right here, so you should be able to just kind of with your finger roll it back and forth. So we're going to have to actually pull the pins all the way out. Alright, so you just shoot the ends in with little brake parts cleaner, and that should make them where they want to shove back into the hole. A little bit easier. Okay. Then you take a 3/4 inch, 3/8 inch extension and push them through and come out. And what's binding up, you can see right here, all that build up where it hangs out the end of these here. This is the way it should be coming out. So it's got all that build up on the end of it. So in a minute there I'll show you how to clean these up. So let's go ahead and remove it. This one's actually even worse. It's got corrosion all the way through it, so water has gotten down in here and started corroding it. So it's actually left little ridges and stuff. So it really doesn't want to slide back and forth. It's got some rubber grommets and stuff in here, and that's supposed to slide on. And once you get all that moisture trapped in there, it's just going to start rusting this away. So when we get ready, we'll put actually Loctite on this. Not Loctite. We'll put some anti-seize on this, and it'll slide them back in there. Alright, so there's two ways that you can clean up these slide pins, or slide anchors, I don't know what you call them. But they're actually supposed to be able to slide some inside the caliper. And when they get stuck like that, you know, they usually wear one brake pad almost out and there's some left over, so both of them being equal like they should be. So there's two ways you can clean them up. One, you can take a piece of sandpaper like this, just go ahead and sand on all the way around until it looks like that. You get all that old stuff off of it, but there is a little bit easier way. You can take a screw like this that fits down over the center, and if you happen to have a drill with a brush tip on it, it'll make it go way faster. And you can also clean it up and kind of polish it at the same time. So, alright, just remember to wear safety goggles for this bit. So you want to just take and you're just going to set it up against it like that and just try going around. It should kind of spin on its axis there a little bit, so you can keep on sanding it or buffing it off all the way around. Alright, so here's some I prepared earlier. So here they are, completely redone. Pretty nice and shiny. You can still see the marks on it, but at least they're nice and smooth now. You can't actually feel it, it's just staining. So they're basically ready to sit back in the caliper. We're going to put some anti-seize on it. That way it might not set up so hard next time. And then we should be good to go. Okay, so we got the caliper up and out of the way now. So now we're just going to have to remove the actual assembly itself. It sounds like it's rolling pretty good, so my bearings should be pretty good. To get the cap off, you're just going to take a hammer, tap on it all the way around until it comes off. And then the cap will come right off there. Set it to the side. Then you're going to have a bunch of old grease up in here. So you've got your pin here. That's keeping everything in. We'll go ahead and we'll get some of that cleaned off, and then we'll get back to it. Alright, so we got it kind of cleaned up. So this pin's going to be bent either around the side here. Mine was actually bent up and into the center there. So I unbent the carter pin, and you're just going to pull it up and out. I usually just set it right down into the actual hub cap there. So then you're going to take your 1-inch wrench and take the nut off, and there'll be a washer behind that, and then you'll have your bearing. Alright, so I was actually mistaken there. It's actually 1 inch and 1/16. So you're just going to slip it on there, break it loose. Once you got it broken loose, it should just screw right off there pretty easily. A few little burrs on there. Okay. There's your nut. Take our screwdriver here. Pull that out. And then your washer's going to have a little notch in it right there. That's actually going to fit in that square piece right there. So, there. So that little notch just slides up that groove there and keeps it from spinning. Alright, so this thing is all loose. You should be able to slide it off. This bearing will drop out if you're not careful. You can just go ahead and remove it now if you want to. And just take it and walk it. And pull it right out. So now all you gotta do is just grab it, slide it towards you, and she'll come right off. There we go. And there she is. And that's all that's to it. So you can see all this debris and stuff back here. It's where that oil seal was leaking just a bit, slinging oil out. So it's a good thing we're going ahead and replacing that along with the rotor. This rotor is not too bad. You can see where once upon a time somebody let it get down because it shouldn't have those grooves in it. It should be nice and flat. So once upon a time somebody's had it start grinding on them, and they just went and threw some pads on it. It's not, you know, the end of the world if you do that. You just have those little offsets in it. Won't be completely flat, but hey, if you're doing budget, this one would still work. We wouldn't have to replace it. Since we got it, we're going ahead and replace it anyhow. Okay, so to get the back bearing out, it's actually captured by the rear oil seal there, or grease seal. So you're going to take an extension with a socket on it that will just fit right down through the center portion there. And you'll have to go to each side and hammer it down until it will drop off the back side of it there. You get your socket down in there, tap it, move it around, now keep working it so it drops off. Pull your socket back out, and your bearing and disc cover should be back there now. Get them both off. Now you could technically, if these were still good and they didn't have a bunch of grease around the outside of them, they look pretty nice, you could probably still use these. But they're about $7 a piece, I think, for these. So I just say go ahead and replace them while you're in here. And then there's your bearing. We're going to get these cleaned up. Alright, so after you're done cleaning them out, they should look like that. some cleaning. Shouldn't see any grease down in there. So these are ready to be repacked and reinstalled. This one looks like it might have got just a hair warm once upon a time, but it still rolls good. There's no humps or anything. I just want to take it and spin it in there. And if you feel it kind of clunking a little bit, every little bit or catching, then yeah, that one will probably need to be replaced. But this one still spins pretty good and free. There's no hint of it knocking or clinking around a little bit, so it should be good to reinstall. So to repack your bearings, you're going to take, and this is where you want to definitely get some gloves on, or you're going to have to wash your hands quite a bit. You want to get a nice finger full of grease. You want to have the open end of the bearing towards you, not the closed end, as you can see. So this one's the more open end, and you're just going to rub it down and slide it up your palm. Let's see, maybe I'll show that. Just like that right there. And what this is doing is it's forcing, as you can see, the grease to come all the way up through the bearing onto the top side of it there. So you want to do that a few times, turn it, do it again, just keep going all the way around the bearing until you got it depleted. You can see the grease going all the way up through it, all the way around. This is about the messiest part of this whole job, but you have to do it. So, once you've got it all completed there, it's pretty close. Just want to make sure it's as packed in as you can get it. Definitely don't want a dry bearing. You won't be going too far. Okay. As you can see, it's pretty much all the way up through there. One section there is where I have my finger, so it pulled most of the grease off, but you can see it came up through right through there. So it all should be pretty well greased up. And we'll just get the other one and we'll be ready to put it all back together. Rear bearing packed. Got it all greased in there. Now then we're going to put it into the back of the rotor here. Got on some new gloves. I'm going to get them all oily, but just want to put a little bit of oil down in there first. Grease down in there. Rub it around and set your bearing into the race. And get it flush down in there. Make sure she's seated. Rub off some of this grease here. Spread it all around. Take just a pinch of this and rub it inside the new seal here. Now there's the inner and the outer. This part here is going to be the inside. Then the outside should be basically flush. I just have metal directly up to the edge of the seal there. You can see this one's got a big drop in there. And that'll be the inside, facing down. You can use a hammer to install these. It's a little bit easier if you actually have one of these to put over the whole thing, or you can use a big socket. You can just use a hammer, nice clean one, and just start tapping it all the way around. It usually just wants to keep popping out on you. But you can do it this way. It just takes a little bit longer to get it seated in there, right? But since I have this, I'm going to go ahead and use it. But you can do that, just keep tapping around until it comes down flush. Okay, we're down flush. Wipe off all the excess. and we should be good. And before you actually install your rotor, you want to go around with a rag and some brake cleaner and do the whole thing, clean it all the surfaces off where the pads are going to be sitting, so you don't have any of that oily substance in between the brake pad and the rotor itself. Alright, so we're ready to shove the rotor back onto the spindle here. The only place you might want to grease up a little bit is just this place where the new seal is going to ride. Just take a pinch of grease on it and just run it around the whole thing. Other than that, the spindle can just be dry when you shove it back on there, because what you want to do is you want to take and pack the inside of the rotor there. That's the inside there. With some grease before you shove it back on. And you want to get it up on there and get it started. And then before it comes up the other side, you want to take your other bearing here and shove it into the end to keep the grease in there. You can work it all on at the same time. Turn it a little bit and she should pop up onto the back seal there. Okay, that should be it. There you go. And the new rotor's installed. And we'll just put everything back on the outside and she'll button it up. She'll be as good as new. Alright, so we get the old bearing back in there on the outside. So now we're going to take our washer, cleans it up there. I'm going to slide it back on first. It's going to be followed by our nut. Slide it on there like that. It's got some burrs on it, so it's going to be a little tough. Just tighten down until it's reasonably tight. Make sure that it spins. And then, once you're pretty sure about it, I'm just going to back off, come back down on it again. Should spin kind of freely, just a little bit of drag. Then you're going to put this little keeper on, and you have to line it up to the right position so the key will fall through. You put this down through, and you'll just take and bend it out or up one way or the other just to keep it from coming off. And then you're pretty much done. Now put the cap back on the end here. Got it all cleaned up. Just stick it back on, hammer it back on there, and you're done. If it's bent like this here, see where it's bent just a little bit, it'll be fine. Just as long as it doesn't have any holes into the inside. Completely fine to reuse. Alright. Alright, so our caliper is ready to start putting back together. So we've got our two, I guess, guide pins for the bolts, and they're going to slide back up in here. But before we do that, we're going to put some anti-seize up in there. So what I'm going to do is just get some on the tip of my brush here, like so, and just stick it up in there, roll it around and come out. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Get too much excess there. Get too much excess up there. Alright, so now since we got it up in there, I'm going to take some WD-40 and take my pins and spray just a little bit on them and rub them around. We'll make them slide through the anti-seize just a little bit easier. Alright, just going to show it up in there. It's going to float now. I was going to have to really put some pressure on it to get this showed up in there. shove this one up in. Just put this in there. Now if you have one that's kind of free and the other one's biting still just a little bit, you could try changing them out. What I do right here. Let's see if it works better that way. This it actually does. Okay. Alright, those both feel pretty similar to each other in sliding. So we should be ready to pop our pads back on there and shove it all back together. Alright, so just want to show you this real quick. Here's the two part numbers for the oil seal, the grease seal, and then the rotor itself. These are going to be the two part numbers here. And before we install the pads, there's a few places that you'll want to actually put the anti-seize on it. It's going to be on this metal spring piece here, and on the back side of it where it's going to be, that piston's going to be riding back and forth on it, and the two guide areas there and there. On this one, it's just this little portions right here and here where it sits on the outside of the caliper. You don't have to do this, but if you have the anti-seize laying around, it'd be nice to do that, just so one of the brakes don't start binding up and then you get uneven wear. Alright, so we can go ahead and install the rear brake pad. It's just going to slide down in there. Let's set the back spring portion into the cylinder, push down the front here, and pop it into place. And then the exterior one, it's got these two notches cut out right here and here, and you're just going to take the spring portion, try to set them right down on top of those, and work it right down. There you go. Those are installed and ready to put down onto the rotor. Alright, so we put some anti-seize on the top here and on the bottom rider down there. And you're just going to take your whole brake assembly, sit it on, slide it down on there. Alright, so you're going to take your screws here and you're going to pull the anti-seize on them. Or you can put them in dry, whichever way you choose. They're going to come through, stick them through. You'll have to find that hole. Once it drops in, you should feel it up tight a little bit. And start your other one. Okay, and then usually what I do is I get the actual 10 millimeter Allen wrench, put it in there, take a hammer, take the hammer and pound on it a little bit, and then she should be good. Alright, so once you're done with that, you got everything torqued down, put the wheel back on and torque them all down to 100 foot-pounds, and then you're good. Alright, before I forget, when you're putting all this back together and tightening all these down, make sure that you get the ram symbol facing straight up and down. Right there, so it's, you know, looking at the fender, it's straight up and down. That way when you're driving down the road, it's all nice and aligned. Alright, so we'll just grab the rest of the lugs there and we'll put them on. And then you're ready to go down the road. There we go. Oh yeah. Oh, never mind. Just go ahead and finish the lugs. Alright, so before you crank it up, just go ahead and give your pedal a few pumps. Make sure everything's seated properly. And it feels pretty good. Rolls pretty nice after the brake's off. And we still over full. should be about right there. Should be full, and we're way up almost into the cap area, so might have to oops, pump some out. Alright, what you can do is just take a rag and soak it and pull it out, and that should get you down to about right. Okay, and that should do it. Everything should be tied up. We'll go ahead and set her down. Just remember to take your jack stand out back there before you start setting it down, and we should be good. Thank you for watching.